When an elderly black woman entered the restaurant, she expected a celebration in honor of her birthday. Instead, she was met with cold stares and humiliation from a young waiter, who had no idea he was speaking to the mother of the restaurant's owner. He denied her the right to dine without realizing that his career would be destroyed in just a few minutes. What happened next would surprise eventos who have seen a lot in life. But let's start from the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe and like to help fight systemic racism and social injustice. Mrs. Evelyn slowly approached the restaurant. Over the years, this cozy corner had become a special place for her. She often came here, sometimes with friends, sometimes with family, and occasionally alone. Today, she came to celebrate her birthday, expecting a warm welcome and smiles from the staff. As she entered, she was enveloped by the familiar atmosphere. The sounds of conversations, the clatter of dishes, and the pleasant aroma of freshly prepared meals. She scanned the room, looking for a free table, but her attention was suddenly drawn to a new waiter. He stood at the counter, slightly frowning, as if irritated by something. Evelyn paid little attention to this, assuming he was simply tired after a long shift. She walked up to him and smiling said, "Hello. I've reserved a table under my name. My name is Evelyn." The young waiter glanced at her over his notepad. Something strange flashed in his eyes, making Evelyn feel a slight unease. He curtly replied, "There are no tables available. All are occupied." Evelyn frowned, trying to understand why her reservation was not honored. "But I called yesterday and confirmed my reservation. Could there have been a mistake?" The waiter sighed impatiently and responded gruffly, "I said there are no tables available. You should look for another place." Evelyn felt her heart tighten with hurt. She had been a regular customer here, knew all the waiters by name, and had never encountered such treatment. However, she sensed there was more to it than just a full restaurant. The waiter's look, his tone, it was all too familiar to her. She had known that look since childhood, the look she received when entering shops, offices, and even schools. It was the look of someone who did not see her as an equal. Despite the internal turmoil, Evelyn tried to remain calm. She took a step forward and asked, "Are you sure there's no place for me? Perhaps I could wait by the counter?" The waiter crossed his arms over his chest and smirked sarcastically. "I've said all I can. There are no available tables, and that's not up for discussion." Evelyn felt the eyes of the entire restaurant begin to turn toward her. She never liked attracting attention, especially in moments like this. But this time was different. She wasn't just a customer. She was the mother of the restaurant's owner. Although she didn't want to wield that status as a weapon, she felt she had to stand up for her right to be there. Suppressing her anger and disappointment, she gathered her thoughts and asked, "Perhaps you don't know who I am?" The waiter looked her over with disdain. "I don't care who you are. There's no place for people like you here." Those words hit her like lightning. She was shocked that such prejudice could still exist in her own community, and in the restaurant owned by her son, no less. But she also felt a familiar old feeling rising within her, the need to fight back. Evelyn stood still, trying to process what was happening. Inside her, a sense of injustice grew, and she felt how suppressed indignation began to push aside her usual restraint. Her heart beat faster. Memories of past humiliations and injustices she had experienced throughout her life resurfaced, mixing with the bitterness of this moment. But Evelyn was no longer the young girl who could be easily intimidated. She had endured years of struggle, learning how to defend her dignity. Yet at this moment she felt conflicted. She was tired of fighting. Age and years of battling for rights, justice, and respect had taken their toll. But with this came the realization. To retreat now would mean allowing this injustice to continue, and she had never been one to give up. Sensing her hesitation, the waiter, emboldened by her silence, smirked even wider. "Do you think you're allowed here just because you're a regular customer? You don't belong in places like this anymore." He threw a quick glance at her old bag and worn shoes. "Go back to where you came from." Despite her weariness, Evelyn straightened up. Inside her, determination was bubbling up. She remembered her son James, how she had supported him all his life, how she had protected him from injustice when he, A young black man had been repeatedly stopped and searched, without reason. How they had fought together against a system that left no space for people like them. Now she couldn't allow herself to stay silent. At that moment, murmurs began among the diners. People started raising their heads, paying attention to the conflict. Some took out their phones to record what was happening, and posts began appearing on social media with comments about the blatant discrimination. The digital age was on her side. People could no longer silently witness such things without getting involved. Evelyn glanced at the other patrons. She knew that if she left, it would leave her with a feeling of defeat and helplessness. She couldn't do that, not now. Taking a deep breath, she raised her hand, gesturing for someone from the senior staff. "I would like to speak to the manager." Her voice was calm, but it held a note of steel. The waiter hadn't expected this turn of events. His arrogance quickly gave way to confusion. He glanced again at her modest appearance, seemingly expecting her words to be an empty threat. Nevertheless, he reluctantly moved behind the counter to call for his superior. While he walked away, Evelyn stood her ground, trying to collect her thoughts. People continued to watch her, whispering, but now their looks held more curiosity than judgment. Social media was gaining momentum. New posts, photos, and videos spread quickly with hashtags condemning acts of racism. Unbeknownst to Evelyn, her fight had become a public affair. She felt a small sense of satisfaction rising within her. Perhaps this was what needed to be done, to show that people like her do not back down in the face of injustice, even if they are tired. A few minutes later, the restaurant manager emerged from the kitchen, nervously adjusting his tie. He had already received several messages about the unfolding incident, and the attention it was attracting clearly concerned him. As soon as he saw Mrs. Evelyn, his expression changed. He immediately recognized her. This was James's mother, the owner's mother. He stepped forward, trying to diffuse the tension, but it was already too late. The situation was escalating, and more customers were witnessing the conflict. "Mrs. Evelyn," he began as he approached her, "I apologize for the misunderstanding. Let me personally help you find a table." Evelyn looked at him, her gaze calm but firm. She could have let the manager resolve everything now, but she understood that the problem would not be solved simply by seating her. This wasn't just about one bad waiter. It was about deep-rooted systemic bias that had infiltrated even the places where she thought she would always be welcome. People could no longer just turn a blind eye to such incidents. "You don't need to apologize only to me," Evelyn said firmly, her eyes sweeping across the room. "You need to apologize to everyone who has faced similar discrimination. This isn't just an incident. It's part of a problem that needs to be addressed." The manager hesitated, feeling more pairs of eyes fixed on him. He knew that if he didn't act now, the consequences could be far more serious than a few disgruntled customers. Already, he saw people filming the scene, knowing the story would soon be online, and he didn't want this restaurant to be known for a scandal involving racial discrimination. Meanwhile, James, who had seen a video of the incident, was rushing to the restaurant. He felt anger and disappointment that such a thing had happened in his establishment, a place he had worked hard to make a symbol of hospitality and respect for all people. As soon as he walked into the restaurant, his face was cold and resolute. He saw his mother standing with her head held high in front of the manager and the waiter, who were trying to justify themselves. James approached them, and his voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "What's going on here?" The waiter paled, realizing who was in front of him. James didn't wait for an explanation. His gaze was fixed squarely on the manager. "Why is my mother standing here, forced to endure this humiliation? I opened this restaurant so that everyone could feel welcome, regardless of who they are. And instead, she faces discrimination." The manager tried to explain, but James didn't give him the time to offer excuses. He turned to the waiter. "You're fired. Leave the restaurant immediately." The waiter didn't argue. His face twisted in the realization that he had lost job due to his prejudice, and he quickly headed for the exit. Meanwhile, people in the restaurant continued recording the event, and within minutes, the video of the waiter being fired and James's firm words began to go viral on social media. This moment became a turning point not only for the restaurant but for how society perceived such incidents. James turned to the diners and staff. My mother should never have had to go through this. No one should. I want everyone to know that there will be no place for discrimination and bias share. This applies to all of us. We will work to ensure that something like this never happens again. The crowd erupted in applause, and the room was filled with approving cheers. The community support gave strength to both James and Evelyn. In that moment, it became clear that their struggle had not been in vain. Social media had become a powerful tool in the hands of the people, and this incident would not go unnoticed. Though exhausted from everything that had happened, Evelyn felt proud of her son. This day had become not just a celebration of her birthday, but a symbol of how Evan's malactions can have a big impact when they stem from a fight for justice. After the waiter's dismissal, the atmosphere in the restaurant gradually calmed down. James, standing next to his mother, addressed everyone present. Thank you all for your support. This restaurant is a place for everyone, regardless of race or background. We will do everything we can to ensure that such incidents never happen again. His words were met with applause, and the support from customers became a reminder to both James and Evelyn that the fight for equality never ends. Social media was already buzzing with comments, and the videos from the scene had spread across the internet, bringing the story to a wide audience. Evelyn looked at her son with pride. This day had become not only her birthday, but a symbol of the power of community and their shared struggle against injustice. James promised to implement staff training programs and support initiatives aimed at promoting equality and tolerance. When the restaurant finally emptied, Evelyn and James sat together, realizing that this day had marked an important milestone, not only for their family, but for all those who faced prejudice as well. Their struggle had become an inspiration to many, and James continued to work to ensure that fairness and respect would always reign in his restaurant.